let's have everyone be on this side so then I can see you all at the various levels of participation. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, welcome to our Faithful Advocacy Workshop. Normally I teach an environmental focused breakout session at this conference, and this year I kind of thought, well, I'm giving a good overview of the bills in our main plenary. So how about we offer some space for some skill building around faithful advocacy itself. So if I don't know you, my name is Sister Jessica Zimmerly. I'm a deaconess in the Lutheran tradition. I serve as the program and outreach director, changed my title, the advocacy director now at Earth Ministry and Washington Interfaith Power and Light. So we are a multi-faith statewide organization, and we focus in on the issues of environmental justice and stewardship of creation. To just kind of start by taking a temperature of the room here. So curious kind of where you're stepping in with faithful advocacy, what comfort level you might say that you're at with advocacy in general. So if we could share that by using your hand and showing a number of fingers between 1 to 5. So a 5 is like, I've done this a lot. And a 1 is, this is my first time. And it's great, wherever you fall on that spectrum. So give it a thought. And then when you're ready, show me your hands. Online, we've got some 2s. We got 3s. We got a couple 5s. You want to teach the workshop? Should I go? We got some 1s and 2s. Great. Okay. That's helpful. Can I also hear just from a couple, if you want to share what your hope is for our short time together today. So if there's something that you really came to this workshop hoping for.
Well, what I do now is I get my email from Fan and I get my email from you.
If you've been on today, Zoom friends, you might have seen that there's been some connectivity issues with the Wi-Fi bandwidth here. So hopefully we can keep this going. But my apologies, I'm just trying to close more things so that it might have a better chance. So let me close one more tab there. Ginny, I see that you have your hand raised.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm chair of the Justices Witness team at my church, and though I have been doing the advocacy work online thanks to your previous trainings and emails, reminder emails, I would like a simplified version that's being recorded right now that I can have everybody else watch so they'll do it too.
Nice. I love that. Yes. Have a tool to pass on to others. We also have Earth Ministry WAIPL did a community-wide training similar to today's that includes slides. And there's a recording of that just went up onto our YouTube channel.
Okay.
So I will get that link out to everybody. Before I forget, because I do want to send you follow-up resources, I'm going to pass around a sign-in sheet. And if you don't mind, even if you already get emails from us, putting your info here so then I can send you a thank you note with some links that are relevant to what we talk about today. And if those of you who are on Zoom can just put in your name and your email in the chat, then I will add you to the sign-in sheet before I close the Zoom. So I'm gonna get that going. Okay, so I heard hopes of wanting a tool and some clear resources to share with your green team, wanting to know kind of what to do a step further into being a faithful advocate on your own a bit more. Any other hopes for this time together or for what you'd like to learn? Yeah, Katrina.
So I've done a little bit of this, I was at three, and I've come to understand the importance of connecting through stories
Mhm.
and not just coming in with a fact sheet that they've already heard from the professionals. And I suck at storytelling. And I started to understand, I don't really understand what a story is. I think it might be big scale. So I'm looking to get an idea of maybe some examples. What is the story to connect over? How,
Yes.
how might I start thinking, I don't have any stories to tell. I don't think that's true.
Right.
I think I'm just not understanding fully how to make that connection.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to say, oh, I don't have any interesting stories, right? And then think like, oh, one time I was, and I saw this beautiful, you kind of, I think it's easy to be in that place of saying like, oh, it's hard to tell stories, and we're made of our stories, right? It's just kind of figuring out how to frame them and when to bring them forward and how to bring them forward. So I think that's where I would like to spend a lot of our time together today, is around the storytelling piece. Because also I would say that in terms of your question, sorry, remind me of your name. Oh, not in front of Katrina. Yes, yes. Martha, yes. Yeah, I was like, you covered it up, but I knew we talked earlier. So in terms of kind of taking a next step, really, it's kind of refining how you tell your stories so you can have more conversation and not just use the base form that we offer, but to personalize your comments and to write your own emails directly to your legislator. So before we get into the story piece, I will say my thought is to focus mostly on state legislative level advocacy. Of course, we have our 3 branches of government in the United States. So legislative is just one of them. There's legislative, executive, and judicial. We do at Earth Ministry WAIPL do work in the executive branch, because that includes state agencies that are appointed by the governor, right? So the Department of Ecology, Department of Health, Transportation, these are ones that we're often in conversation with, who have the job of implementing the laws that we pass in Olympia. So I think I want to just provide kind of a basic overview of how things move through our legislature. Would that be something that you would like to hear? We're a small group, so I can really tailor this for you all. And then we'll get into what we bring to it. We're going to do that. So in our state legislative process, a bill becomes a law by passing through a variety of hoops and doing that in a way that is repeated in both chambers of our legislature. So we have the House of Representatives, where we got 2 representatives each. And then we have the Senate, where we have 1 senator for each of our 49 districts here in Washington. And they go through various different hurdles, like I said leaps before, but to get to even just to the floor vote. So when you heard us in our plenary today, talking about having cutoff dates, that's what this applies to. So first, a bill is introduced and assigned to a policy committee. The committees that we're usually working the most with are the environment committees, but sometimes again, health, transportation, et cetera. But that's a topical, assignment. And that committee talks about kind of, does this bill make sense? Right? Like, what is the policy of this? And does it make sense? And is it what the people want? And so in each committee, stop along the way, we have opportunities to participate. Usually that is through signing in or testifying at hearings. So outside of meeting with your legislators, you can follow along with our bills. And we have a handy dandy page on Earth Ministry WAIPL's website where you can click through, and we provide the updates. Each morning we refresh and put updates there for you, but you can see when something is scheduled for a hearing, and you can click through and you can sign in pro or con. Now, this is something that used to have to be done in person in Olympia. And so it's a gift from COVID that now our democratic process is much more democratic, right? Because folks in Spokane can participate just the same as folks in Seattle and in Olympia. So I'm very grateful that they kept that virtual option in place this year, though the legislature is back meeting in person. So you can sign in per con, you can testify. I actually, if you really want to testify at a hearing, like if that's the next step you might want to take, contact me, let me know. I would not, it kind of hurts me to say this, but I would not recommend just signing up on your own to testify, but connecting with an organization like Earth Ministry or the Sierra Club or Spokane River Keeper, right? Because we will often like know and will be in conversation with all of our coalition partners, and they'll put together panels. So they'll come to me and they'll say, we need a faith leader for a panel. And then I'll go, oh, okay, I remember that I talked with Valerie who's interested in testifying, and reach out. But if everybody just signs in to testify, it actually can hinder our bills because the clock is ticking. So with that cutoff that I mentioned, we have until February 17th for bills to get through their policy committee, through that first hurdle. And if they don't pass that cutoff date, they stall and are done for the year. So if we have 100 people signed in to testify in support of the bill, yeah, on one hand, that's great and shows that support. On another hand, it can make the hearing roll into a second day or even a third day, and delay is not our friend in terms of getting the bill through. Unless we're told like we really need vocal support, like, so there might be a time where I email you and say, everyone testify. But generally, we try to have it more focused in on individual communications with your legislator and then signing in as your action for hearings. Yeah.
Before you leave this topic, the question,
Mhm.
the problem.
Thank you for bearing with me, Zoom friends. I will send you the full recording of the other event, but thank you for bearing with us as we pop on and off here. The question is kind of around timing of the actions when they pop up and how to disperse that within your faith community. It's tricky. It is tough. A lot of it, sometimes things are scheduled further out, but a lot of times it's the week of, or it's even like the day or 2 days beforehand. I would say if there's a bill that your community is really interested in supporting, say it's our bill on recycling or the toxics bill or the climate bills I mentioned. If you honestly keep our webpage up and just refresh it, because like I said, each day we update it. So if a hearing gets scheduled, it will pop up and you'll see it in our list. You can also do that through the state legislature's webpage. And I actually through that, you can sign up for them to email you. That's probably actually the better way. You can set up for them to email you when something is scheduled or a vote happens. And that's just, if you go, I can show people on my computer actually afterwards, if you want to see a little tour. Normally, if I was able to have the screen, I would show you where to go to do that. So anyone who wants to stick around afterwards, we can huddle around my laptop and I'll show you how to set up those alerts. But I think it's just, yeah, having to have people be ready to be on their toes and kind of knowing the overall rhythm of the session. So let me get to our other cutoff dates because that might help. After our policy committee is usually a fiscal committee. I say usually because there might not be a stop at that committee if there's no cost associated with the bill, but most bills have a cost. They call them a fiscal note. So it has to go to its fiscal committee as its second hurdle. They also do public hearings in their fiscal committees. So this is most often where we show up and say, this is worth our money. We need to invest in communities and resilience and care for one another. And that is worth our money. So that's where we really bring a values strong message in, that we want to see our dollars put to good work. And then, so our fiscal committee cutoff is the 24th of February. So there's a lot less time to get that through that hurdle. And after that is when it then goes to the rules committee, right? There's a lot of hurdles. Rules committee is basically the committee that decides when it gets to the floor. So they're doing a lot of like internal negotiation, but they'll get it scheduled for a floor vote. So that's where the actual representatives, all of the representatives or all of the senators get to vote on the bill, and it either passes or it doesn't. And there's conversation. You can watch it online. It's kind of fun sometimes to watch on TVW. And so I would say before that vote is when things really are a good time. You can look at that cutoff date, which I don't have off the top of my head. But I'm gonna pull it up while I talk. That's a good time to plan, just to plug in whatever bills are still alive after the fiscal committee cutoff. Contact your legislators in support of them. Ask them to vote yes on the floor. If they're a sponsor of that bill, meaning you see their name when you go look up the bill number, that means they've sponsored it. Tell them, thank you, please champion it. Even if you think they're gonna vote your way or they're not going to vote your way, it's still really important that they hear from you. One of my favorite fun facts is it takes 7 contacts to move an elected leader, one rung up the ladder or down, right? So there's what, 8 of us, 9 here, plus 3 more online. So between all of us, that's actually a very compelling message we could provide if all of us take the time to send an email, make a phone call, and share that we're people of faith and we care about this bill. We want to see toxics out of cosmetics. Why are we even talking about this right now, right? That's enough to get somebody who might not be tracking the issue to look into it. I've been in meetings with legislators who said, oh, I wasn't aware of this. Like, I'm gonna have to flag it and like have my aide get me some notes and, look into it, really start to engage. If they're already going to vote yes, it's enough to bump them up to be more of a champion. So it's really important that even if you think they're gonna vote with you, to have that conversation to ensure that they don't just vote yes, but they also start to have conversations, maybe go across the aisle, and be more of a champion on the topic. And, I think I wouldn't say maybe someone who's a hard no, it might take a bit more than 7 contacts, but that's an average. But I think it's still important, right? Because you got them in on this, right? You elected them, they're there to represent you. And every time you hear them, and every aide for any legislator is taking a tally for the issues that they're hearing from. And so they're literally tracking these numbers of contacts they hear from folks. So if they have a whole bunch of contacts about climate action, and they might not be inclined towards that, at some point it could be enough for them to say, well, how can we look into this in a way that might be fiscally responsible for, a mesh of their values with the values that we're calling them to lean more toward. Yes.
Can you say that again? 7 contacts of 7 people calling in.
7 contacts is enough to kind of move somebody up or down a notch. So not straight from a no to a yes, but to have somebody kind of put something on someone's awareness enough that they might change their mind.
Just some measure of a little more.
Yeah, a little more awareness, a little more willingness to support or commitment to be a leader on the topic. I see Jenny has her hand up.
Yes. I remember you saying it was really important that when we message on the website, Voting Pro or whatever, that we need to say we're from a faith community, maybe even name that faith community. So you did just mention it, but I would just hammer that in a little harder, because as a faith community, our representatives realize that we are just representing one person of a larger number, and that we're taking it seriously. So if we say
Right.
that, our vote is actually counted more, I think.
Yes, Jenny, you got it. I love that. Thank you. So this is one of, I don't know if you heard, I'm going to be stepping away from this role, sad, at the end of the month. But one of my favorite things to tell is when I'm saying I'm a person of faith in front of a decision maker, I feel like Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings, when he has the ghost army and like comes in and saves the day a little bit, right? Because when you say that you're a member of a community that gathers specifically around shared values, there's real power in that, right? So there's kind of this amplifier effect, and you don't have necessarily the authority to speak on behalf of your church or synagogue, right? So there's a mindfulness around the language you use of saying you're a member of Salem Lutheran Church. Not that you are representing Salem Lutheran Church, but they know when you say that, okay, Salem Lutheran Church is a place where people come together and share a value system. And so there's a lot of other people who probably think similarly to this individual. Also very pragmatically, people of faith vote. We have higher voter turnout numbers than other demographics. So they also kind of see that as a motivating factor because they're always, electeds are always thinking about their next election cycle. Like as soon as they're elected, it's thinking about the next turn. And getting back to Katrina's kind of original question about timing, I think where I was trying to land with that is that you can know for sure that in those like 2 weeks between the fiscal committee cutoff and the floor vote cutoff, that's the time where you can just be sending emails out anytime to your legislator asking for their support. Whereas in the committee processes, it is more time sensitive of you have to sign in before an hour before the hearing, and that can come quicker than others. If you see your bill scheduled for executive session, that translates to a vote in committee. So for example, our climate bill 1181 is scheduled for executive session in the House. I think it's actually like the land committee. It's not the environment committee. And that's on Monday. So if you had your representative serves on that committee, which you can check in the roster, now would be a good time to send them a note and say, please vote yes if you see it scheduled for executive session. But there's all this like jargon and language, right? So it drives me bonkers. I'm like, I just want this to be more accessible for real people, which is why we take the time to do this learning together, and to kind of show them that we want to be participating in the process by being in touch. I think I want to move on to kind of our storytelling pieces, but I will say bills, after they get that floor vote, say they get passed, then they have to go do everything again in the opposite chamber. So right now, since we're at we just finished the second week of session, many of our bills have 2 bill numbers, which means they were introduced in the House and introduced in the Senate. It's the same bill, the same language. They're basically trying to double their odds that one of those will pick up momentum and make it through. And when they kind of see which one starts to gather steam, usually they'll talk to their colleagues in the opposite chamber and they'll say, okay, we're going to let go of the House version, let it stall at cutoff, but we're going to put all of our energy into the Senate bill from now on. So for now, you're seeing 2 numbers of everything, which can be kind of confusing, but it'll whittle down as we go through these hurdles and kind of hone in. And then yes, if it passes on the floor, it comes back, has to do the whole process in the opposite chamber. If amendments are added, there's a whole reconciliation process, which can get rather confusing. But find an organization, doesn't have to be my own, that you trust, because we try to do this work in the tracking for you so you can show up when it makes the most sense and share your stories. So that's where we're going to go next, is into our storytelling. But before I do, are there any questions kind of about the process or the setting of our advocacy? Yeah, John.
I was just going to suggest maybe talk about the bill tracker
executive, will take it all, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, so there is a bill tracker through the state legislative website. And then we do our own bill tracker on our website. But yeah, there's some cool tools that have popped up. One is called the Take Action Network. And I know a lot of faith leaders have really gotten into that. So there are some tools out there to help track it. But and we're back. Thank you for your patience. I was just saying, I'm not sure if you all heard it, so I'm going to say again that I'm going to put a link in the chat for you all on Zoom to be able to follow along with this handout that I've just given folks in the room. And I see Ginny's hand. You want to chat while I get this into the chat?
My question is very simple. Is it harmful to vote more than once? Send a message to your legislator more than once for the same bill?
I think it's dependent on where it is in the process. So I would say overall, no, but I wouldn't send two messages if the bill is still in the same part of its journey, right? So if it's still in the committee, send them your note, sign in pro. I would say what is helpful is if they do vote yes on it, send a thank you note. Like a good old fashioned thank you note can go far because they get asked to do so many things and are so seldom just thanked. So if you do see that they vote yes, that is a nice gesture to extend. And I put in the chat here, this will take you to a Google Drive folder. And if you click on the fact sheet called Share Your Story, that is what we have just handed out. And we're going to spend the last bit of our time here looking at. But there's also some other worksheets on here. I have copies of them up here that you all can grab on your way out. And I will send them to you virtually as well. So this is my extended recipe for storytelling. It's kind of like the hero's journey, right? If anyone knows kind of the literary term of like, think Frodo. I guess we're just doing Lord of the Rings, right? Frodo, Luke Skywalker, right? The classic journey of a quest. And you are the hero in the quest, right? So that's the great news. I think an important thing to remember in a section of this is kind of who the real villain is. So when you're speaking with your elected, it can be frustrating when your values don't align, right? And it can be tempting to cast them as the villain. So taking a step back to say, who's the real villain here? Which industries are funding this person's campaigns, right? Which industries are benefiting from the toxic chemicals in our cosmetics or our broken recycling system or the climate crisis? And step back and remember, those are the real villains of the story, the people profiting off of the expense of us, the people. And we want to have our decision makers join us on our quest, right? They might not be your Samwise Gamgee, right? They might not be that, but they can pop in and help bolster the cause. And you want to invite them in to join you and to compel them that you can reach even ground, maybe not on all issues, but maybe perhaps on this issue. The toxic spill, I think, is a really good example for this because, I mean, it's kind of I would say it's our most bipartisan topic. No one wants to be poisoning ourselves, our kids, our loved ones, our neighbors, our water. And no one really benefits from that except for the chemical industry, which is incredibly unregulated in our country. So, you know, if you are kind of in that spot of you feel like your person might be the villain here, picking an issue like toxics, where you might be able to find more common ground and reminding yourself, like shifting the narrative a bit. And then the main focus is your story and your values and something that can connect with your elected. Because at the end of the night, when your head hits the pillow, you don't remember numbers. You don't remember facts. You don't remember that stuff. You remember the stories and the things that move your heart. So as people of faith, this is a gift that we bring into the environmental movement, into any social justice movement, is the gift of story and heart and values. And we can trust that there are scientists and policy people and economists and all of those other bases are covered, but our job is to play the home base of the heart. So this will kind of give you a roadmap for how to walk through sharing your story. And we can just walk through it together. And then I have extra copies too, if you want to take some home. So if you want to be, if anyone wants to be filling this out kind of as we go along and you want to practice sharing your story with us at the end, I would love to welcome a volunteer or two. I'll do one as a model as well. But first, let's walk through it. So to start, you pull forward your identity. So you bring forward a part of you that's personal, that might not be right away identified if someone just looked at you, right? So I always like to include that you're a person of faith, and Ginny had that covered. But then think about something about yourself that connects with this specific issue. Like maybe you're a grandparent, maybe you're a lifetime fisherman, maybe you're somebody who goes on walks every day along the river or the ridge. You know, bring out some piece of you that is unique, or even some piece of you that's incredibly relatable. Like, I'm a person who breathes the air, right? And I want to be able to breathe well and not have to lock myself in my home from wildfire smoke for a month every summer, right? So bring out a part of you that resonates with this. I often bring in my my niece or my god babies and say, you know, I'm a godparent or I'm an auntie. So I often think of, my mind goes to future generations with that part, but you can also do more of kind of a hobby, part of your identity. So that's your personal part. Then your communal identity. So again, that you are a member of, fill in the blank, house of worship, spiritual community. You can say you're a member of Earth Ministry WAIPL, member of the Faith Action Network, but show that you're part of a collective, again, that comes together around values. And if you're able to say, I live in your district, that will really pique people's interest. Usually if you're on email, you're going to be writing to the person that's your district's representative. But if you happen to be in person or you're at a town hall and there's different legislators there from the different areas of the district, you know, the Spokane area has kind of a converging of different districts here. So if you are in conversation and just say like, I live in your district by this middle school, or, you know, kind of root yourself to show that you're local. And then our next piece is thinking about our values. So this, we have some listed here as an example, but these are just suggestions. You can get creative with naming your values, but getting concrete with what you value. And you can start to think about how it connects to your faith if you'd like to go there with your story. But we've got values here like treating all people with dignity and respect. Like, I was raised as somebody who's really taught to love my neighbor, treat everyone with dignity and respect. And that extends to the natural world as well and all of God's creation. You can bring things in stewardship, justice, collaboration. I really like bringing in collaboration because I do think that's another gift the faith community can bring. You know, we're such a divided country at this point, but one of the places where we can come together is church, right? Like, and so we want to be furthering that value of collaboration. So choosing your value that kind of resonates with where you want to go with your story. If we flip over to the back, this is where we get to the villain part. So thinking about your villain, I don't always bring them into the story. I think this piece of it is more for you, once again, because sometimes you might not want to say like, you're getting paid by the chemical industry. Don't say it. You don't bring it up, right? But for you to remember, they're not the villain, right? And then put together your quest. So think about what your end goal is, what the better future that you want to see is and what that looks like, and try to paint a picture of it. And then have a specific step that this individual leader can help take to get us towards that vision. So you're both inviting them into that big picture, and you're saying, so we need you to do this right now. And those are kind of the elements. I would say there are three main elements, and you can sum them down. I have a condensed version of this that I give in shorter workshops. That's just, who are you? What do you value? And what do you want? And that's like the recipe card version, right? So who are you personally and communally? What do you value? And how does that connect to your lived experience through story? And what do you want in terms of a big picture vision and a specific step for us to get there? So I can give an example, and then I'll ask for questions. And then if anyone else wants to practice sharing your story, we can take some time with the worksheet beforehand if you'd like. But let me cue something up for myself. I will say too, generally, you don't have to do this off the cuff. If you're testifying, you can write things out. If you're writing an email, you have time to craft things up. If you're calling the state legislative hotline, this is a really awesome resource. It's just a phone number that's operator run. And so they'll pass along a message from you to all three of your electeds. That would be a more kind of on the spot talking to somebody, or if you're in a meeting, but you probably would want to prep a bit before a meeting. Okay, so here's my go at it. My name is Sister Jessica Zimmerly. I am a deaconess in the Lutheran tradition, and I'm really passionate about environmental stewardship as a core of my faith and my call. I do this as the organizer at Earth Ministry Washington Interfaith Power and Light, but also as a member of Ballard First Lutheran Church, where we talk about this most Sundays and try to do our best living into the call to stewardship. And one thing that I've really been thinking about a lot is resilience in climate change, and how, I'm a planner. I really like to plan things out, have a good list. And I would like to see us have a future where we have a plan, we have resilience and community resources in place as we're facing more and more extreme weather and climate conditions. So right now, my family is in the Central Valley of California, which has seen unprecedented flooding. I know the road that my brother-in-law takes to drop his niece off at my mother-in-law's house actually got washed away. The road is gone. And the photos are stunning. And, and my grandmother was having the neighbor come help put sandbags in front of her garage because the water had gotten up that far. So these are what is happening now. And we're rallying together, we're coming together around it. But when my niece is my age, when I might be the grandma in the story, right? I want us to have a good plan in place and to have invested resources so that we can really be prepared for the new reality that is going to be and is already happening. And I want us to be able to feel safe and secure in that. And so that's where I want us to be. And I really think that we can take a big leap to get there by passing this update to the Growth Management Act. I think it's smart to be incorporating climate and resilience into our land use planning. And this is a mechanism that's already built into our state's policies. We just need to make this addition to modernize it. And so I would really ask you to vote yes and quickly move House Bill 1181 through committee, and encourage your colleagues to support it as well, because we need our livable climate for all life to come. So thank you for your time and for your vote.
Great, that was long.
That was a long one. So that would be if I was signed up to testify, you get 2 minutes. So they have a little clock. If you were there in real life, online too, they'll give you a timer. So you get about 2 minutes, which written out is about 1 page. I usually do it like 14 size font though, I think. So, yeah, that was a little rambly because it was off the top of my head, but that's where you start, right? And if you're writing an email to your elected, that's where you start. Just start dumping your story out, the things that you care about. Like I had first just thought about the road being washed out, and then I remembered my grandma with the sandbags, right? So write out the pieces of your story, and then you can go back and you can edit. You can be your own editor and say, what's most compelling in this? And what makes you kind of jump, that would be what makes someone else maybe jump, or ask a friend or your partner, to take a look and be like, what really stands out to you within this, and then hone in there.
I have a question, probably back to real basics, and that is, should I mostly be writing to my own legislators?
Yeah.
If I ever got one on my side, I would keep it as the troll that's right next to, Frodo and Bilbo. If I ever got one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Valley, Spoken Valley.
No, I'm in Andre County.
So the question for Zoom folks was, should I be focused on writing to my district's legislator? And the answer is, for the most part, yes. I would say the exception that I could think of would be if somebody is a prime sponsor of a bill that you really, really care about. So the prime sponsor will be the first name listed on the bill page. And so that's just the person who's really spearheading the effort. So, if you really have a strong personal story about toxics, thank you, Malcolm. We're at our 5-minute warning, just so you all know. You could write to that prime sponsor and say, like, thank you for leading on this. This really matters to me, even though I'm not in your district. But I wouldn't get into the weeds of like asking them to vote one way or the other. But still, I know it's hard, but still, even if you're in a hard district, connect with them, right? Try to build a bridge where you can. Earth Ministry, WAIPL, we have some great stories of, there was a Republican congressman in the Issaquah area, and it was hard for like the Sierra Club or the Nature Conservancy to get meetings with him, but we could get meetings with him, and he's Lutheran, right? So the first time I met him, I dropped a Luther nature quote, and then we're like, oh, we're old friends now, right? And so we had that connection, and come in as a faith-based presence, kind of can open doors for you in spaces that can be more closed off. And I think that's even more true in more conservative parts of the state. If you say, I want to talk to you about how my faith shows up in the policies that guide how we manage our land, right? That's really different than being like environmental tree hugger, yeah, I think that's another gift that we bring in as people of faith.
I noticed you're very focused on faith-based.
Mhm.
And work with the interfaith organization. I came up here from Texas, and when I was going around advocacy day, I was told the person I met is very fundamentally Christian. And since I am Lutheran, which is a Christian denomination, they said, don't say faith-based, say I'm a Christian, because it's going to resonate with that person in the way faith-based form. Do you think that is, just what your opinion of that?
Yeah.
In this context.
Yeah. I think it's a moral gray area, I suppose you could say, but I think it's my thought and first reaction to it is you got to play the game to some extent, right? So doing your research with whoever you're meeting with is part of that. I have this amazing book that tells me the faith tradition of everyone in the state legislature. It's like gold. So if you can dig up that information and then, do it in a way that's true to yourself. So, obviously if you're Jewish, you're not going to show up and say you're Christian, but if you are choosing between word choice that could reflect your identity in different ways, thinking about your targets and what would resonate with them, so in that case, come in and be like, I'm Christian, what would Jesus do? Let's go. But, you know, in other situations, you might want to take a more open-ended multi-faith approach. We organizationally tend to use faith-based just because we are multi-faith as a community. But yeah, I think, and, you know, figuring out like, oh, do they have young kids? That's another thing. It's like, what can you learn about who they are and what drives them, what their values are? And you could also point your story to be something that might connect in that direction.
You could always say, I know a Lutheran or something.
Yeah. A Lutheran and a Catholic, they walk into a bar and then I got a good chuckle there from Lewis. Any last, I can take like one more question, or if anyone does want to practice sharing their story, we could close with that. No pressure though, I don't want to put you on the spot. I will say, go home and like practice talking to a family member, a partner, you know, practice at church tomorrow if you go. But there's something that every time you say your story out loud, bit by bit, it rolls easier off the tongue, right? And you get a little bit more confident in it. All right. Well, I think they want us to head back down for our closing worship, but thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jessica. It was really
Thank you.
interesting.
Yes.